Welcome to the Accountant Guy. Today, we are going to learn how you can create this minimalistic budget planner using Notion. Use this dashboard to keep track of your income and expenses in one central location. Fix your monthly income goals to assess your overall performance. Categorize your expenses to identify areas for improvement. Set and monitor monthly budgets for different categories. Gain access to your budget tracker from any device, anywhere. You can get this template by visiting our online store, theaccountantguy.gumroad.com. The dashboard consists of 3 segments. The summary segment, which gives an overall view of income, expenses, and allocation of funds. The summary segment has a summary of income, expenses, fund allocation, and quarterly allocation of funds. Income details, which gives details of actual versus estimated income expectations, quarterly income overview, and frequency of income. Expense details, which gives details of actual versus budgeted expenses, quarterly expense overview, and type of expenses. In order to use this template, you need to sign up for a Notion account. Let's get started setting up this budget tracker. Here we need to set up the budget planner following these 3 simple steps. The first step is filling out the income details we have for each month. The second step is filling up the expense details that we have for each individual month. Finally, in the third step, we need to allocate the available funds, which is income minus expenses for each individual month, onto different allocations. Let's first start with filling up the income details. First of all, we need to create an inline database, which can be created by typing / and then database to show us different options related to databases. Select Database Inline in order to create the inline database and fill out the required details one by one. We have already created an inline database over here to help you out in the process. In this inline database, we have the following columns. The first column is the income details, which speaks about each individual income that we will earn in a particular month. The second column is the source of income, which is basically a category of each individual income that we have specified in the beginning. For simplicity's sake, I have specified 3 different sources of income, that is salary, side hustle, and other sources of income. So there are basically 3 categories of the source of income over here. Then we have the month of income, which specifies each individual month when we are about to earn an income. Then we have the frequency of income, which specifies how frequently we earn an income. As an example, salary is a recurring income over here, while any other kind of income can be a one-time income. Then we have the expected income column, which is basically how much income can we expect to earn in a month. Then we have the actual income column, which will give us the actual income that we will earn at the end of any particular month. Finally, we have the difference column, which is basically a difference of actual income and expected income for any particular month. Now, for the income details, we are going to specify the property as title type, which is the default property for any inline database. We can notice that this database is named as Expected Income Source Details, which we can name by clicking on the 3 dots. Then we can click on Layout Options, then click over here and then click on Show Database Title to make this database title visible. Once this database title is visible, you can click on this 3 dots and simply edit the database title to fill in the required name of the database. So moving on to the inline database that we are talking about, the second column is the source of income. This basically has a relation property which is related to another database that we are going to talk about later on. Setting up a relationship with another database helps to specify a lot of things and gives us a better analysis when we are about to discuss any particular source of income. The third column is the month of income, which again has a relation property with another database, and we will talk about each of the individual databases as we proceed further. The fourth column is the frequency of income. This is also a related database like others. So all the three columns starting from the source of income, the month of income, and frequency of income are related to individual databases separately for different purposes. The fourth one is the expected income, which is a number property, and this number property can again be given a number format. In here, we have specified the number format to be US dollars. You can specify any currency of your choice, simply by clicking over here and then selecting your preferred currency. Next up is the actual income property, which is again a number property, and this number property can again be given a number format. Here, we have again specified the number format to be US dollars. So this gives a complete picture of how we are supposed to set up the expected income and the actual income in the database. Then we finally have the difference column, which has a formula type property, which is merely the difference between actual income and expected income. So this is how we are going to set up the entire database for the income details in the budget tracker. Now we are going to talk about how the individual columns are linked to different databases through relation, and how we are going to use the COLLAB property to have a better analysis of everything discussed so far. Let's proceed further. If you closely observe the income details section, we have three subsections over here. The first is actual versus estimated income, which gives the total actual income, the total estimated income, the difference in between both these incomes, and the change in terms of percentage of both incomes for the three types of incomes we have over here. Next up we have quarterly income overview, where we have the total actual income and the proportion of each income to the budgeted income for each month, divided into 4 quarters for the year. Next up we have the frequency of income, which shows how frequently we earn an income in relation to recurring income or one-time income. In here we represent the total actual income for each type of frequency of income, as well as the total proportion in percentage for each type of income. Now how do we get all these details? In order to get all these, we will use relation and COLLAB property with the help of another database to find the required information. In this database, in the second column, we have the source of income and the 3 different heads of income specified over here. As we discussed earlier, what if I want to calculate the total actual income for the salary head of income, or I want to calculate the expected income for the side hustle head of income? In order to do this, I will use a relation property wherein I will relate this database with another database through the help of relation. As you can see, this database is related to the income type database. And if we click on the income type database, we will get all the information related to salary, side hustle, and other sources of income, which gives us the total actual income belonging to the 3 different types of income, the total budgeted income for the 3 different types of income, the difference in between both, as well as the change in percentage in between both. Here you can observe that the income type database is linked to the original database both ways. Once the databases have linked both ways, we used a COLLAB property wherein we have specified the relation of the previous column, and then we pulled the desired property of actual income from the original database. Finally, we have calculated the sum of the property that draws the information. Utilizing this, we have obtained the total income for the salary, side hustle, and others. On a similar note, we have also used the COLLAB property for budgeted income, wherein we have utilized the property of the expected income from the previous database. Here we have again specified the related database, which is the expected income source details, and we have calculated the sum for this as well. One thing to note over here is that in a COLLAB property, you just need to pull over the relevant information from the original database, and then you need to specify the property for which you want the information. Now it's time to do further analysis for the month of an income property. What if we want to calculate the total actual income for the month of Jan, or maybe I want to calculate the total expected income for the month of June? How do we do that? For this, we again need to establish a relationship with another database by the name of month of income. In the month of income, we can see that in the month of income database, we have all the respective month's income over here, and for each of the months we have calculated the expected income, the actual income, and the proportion of the actual income to the budgeted income. In order to do this, we have used a relation and a roll-up property. So this database is related to the original database of the expected income we had seen earlier. We have used a roll-up property to calculate the desired values for each column based on the relation established. For expected income, once the relationship is established, we used roll-up and pulled up the values of expected income in the original database. In the Calculate section, we have calculated the sum. This is applicable in both expected income and actual income, wherein we have changed the property it is rolled up to give the desired output. We have simply related it to the source and rolled it up to find the value of the desired property. For the percentage of budgeted income, we have used a formula, which is the total actual income divided by the total expected income. This has been converted into a percent in the number format, which gives us the desired percentage as required. We can also use a bar to represent this percentage. So this is how we are going to calculate all the respective parameters for each of the individual months. Now we are to do further analysis on the frequency of income. What if I want to calculate the total actual income for all the recurring forms of income or the total expected income for all the one-time sources of income? How do we do this? Here we have set up a relationship with another database, that is frequency of income. In the frequency of income database, we can see that we used relation and roll-up property as discussed earlier to find out the total actual income and the total expected income for each mode of income. We have set up a relationship with the original database and we have rolled up the expected income values from the original databases like earlier. In the Calculate part, we have set it to sum to give the summation of all values correctly. You can repeat the same step to roll up the actual income from the original database and sum it up to give the total value of actual income as we desired. One thing to notice here, we have also calculated the total income here, which is rolled up from another database. So the total sum of $47,350 is rolled up from another database in the next column. Finally, we have also calculated the total proportion of each form of income to the total income, wherein we have used a formula. Here, we have divided the total income of each mode of income with the total actual income and converted the number to a percent in the end. This gave us the desired value we were looking for. Now we will look into the other databases linked to the original income database and proceed further. Finally, we are going to look into the last database, which is related to the income details database. Here we will calculate the total estimated income, total actual income, the difference in both, and the change in percentage related to each head of income. In order to do this, we have again established a relationship with the income type database, then we have used rollup to calculate each of the respective properties. For total estimated income, we have again used a rollup property that is related to the income type database named salary, and pulled the total estimated income property and calculated the sum of it. On a similar note, we have calculated the total actual income, difference, and change in percentage. Here we have utilized an if formula which states that if a particular field is total estimated income, then it should give the total estimated income value from the rollup property used. If the particular field is total actual income, then it should give the total actual income from the rollup property obtained. If the particular field is difference, then it should give the difference from the rollup property obtained. If it is none of the above, then it can return a blank value which would be in a number format. For the change in percentage part, we have simply checked if the particular field is change in percentage, which is the last column, post which we can obtain the change in percentage from a roll-up value. Or else we can put a blank value as done earlier. Similar to the above approach, we can perform the if condition checks for all other heads of income as well for the final results. Now, let's head back to the main dashboard to know more about income details. For the income details in the primary dashboard, we have only linked different databases to find the actual versus estimated income, quarterly income overview or frequency of income as discussed earlier. In order to create a linked database, you need to put forward a slash and then type linked database to start linking databases together. Once you click on this, you will be prompted to enter the database you want to link up to. Here you can enter the different databases that we discussed to get the results one by one. Let's see how. For the actual versus estimated income details, we linked the database of income variance distribution which we had discussed earlier. This had the information regarding the total actual income, estimated income, and the change in percentage for each head of income. Similarly, in the quarterly income overview, we have linked the database to the month of income and then set it out onto a gallery mode of view. Here we applied for each quarter, like for Q1, we filtered out the months of Jan, February, and March. For Q2, we filtered out the months of April, May, and June. For Q3, we filtered out the months of July, August, and September, and so on. In the property section, we only kept the actual income, and the proportion of the actual income to the budgeted income was visible only. It has only 3 things shown and the rest is hidden. Similarly, for the frequency of income, the database is linked to the frequency of income database and it is set out to a list mode of view. Here we have only displayed the actual income, total income, in percentage, over here for different heads of income. So we have completed the income details section in the primary dashboard. In the expense details section, we have 3 subsections that are quite similar to the income details as well. In the actual versus budgeted expense, we have 6 different subsections as compared to the income details which have 3 subsections. Here, we are also calculating the total budgeted expense, total actual expense, difference, and change in percentage. For the quarterly expense overview, we are calculating the actual expense for each month and the proportion of the actual expense to the budgeted expense. Similarly, for the type of expense, we have segregated the expenses as variable expenses and fixed expenses, which shows the total actual expenses for each type and the proportion of each expense to the total expense. Let's see how we can build this entire database and proceed further. In step 2, we are calculating the entire expenses in this one database. The first column is the expense source, which specifies the expense details on what we are about to incur. We have the month of expense, which is the month when an expense is incurred. This has a relation property with another database, just like income details as we discussed earlier. Then we have the expense classification, which is basically segregated into 6 different heads of expenses, such as utility and bills, others, loans and debts, food and groceries, entertainment, travel, and transportation. This is linked to another database through a relation, similar to what we discussed earlier for the income details. Then we have the expense type, which is specified as variable and fixed expense, which again has a relation property with the type of expense database. Then we have the budgeted expense, which has a number property set as US dollars that sets the expected expense for a particular month. Then we have the actual expense, which has the number property set as US dollars that tells the actual expense for a particular month. Then we have the difference of both the expenses, and if the difference is positive, this means the actual expense was less than the budgeted expense. And if the difference is negative, this means the budgeted expense was less than the actual expense. All the 3 columns as we discussed are linked to different databases as we saw in the income details part. Now it's time to classify this information in different heads for the required results. As we discussed in the income details section earlier, for the expense details, the actual versus budgeted expense details are linked to another database by the name of expense variance analysis. Essentially, in this database, we are again providing the total budgeted expense, the total actual expense, the difference, and the change in percentage as we saw earlier. Here, the entire database is set onto gallery mode of view. We just have 3 properties visible for the 4 results we saw earlier. Moving on to the quarterly expense overview, we have for each individual month, the actual expense incurred and the proportion of the actual expense to the budgeted expense incurred. This is again a gallery form of view which is linked to the month of expense database, and we have 3 properties showing up, which are the month, the actual expense, and the proportion of the actual expense to the budgeted expense. Finally, we have the type of expenses, which are 2 different types of expenses, that is variable and fixed expenses, which have the actual expense as well as the percentage of actual expense to the total expense. This is a listicle form of view, as we had discussed earlier. Linked to another database is the type of expense. We have two properties visible for the required purpose. Now we need to understand the allocation of expenses to different heads and figure out how the allocation of expenses is carried out. We have discussed the income details as well as the expense details in depth. Now we need to understand how to allocate the available funds from income minus expense onto different heads for allocation. We have created a fund allocation overview that gives an analysis of the remaining funds allocated to different heads. Here we have the investment section, savings section, and others section. In the investment section, we have allocated $20,630. For the savings section, we have allocated $87.85. For the other section, we have allocated $2,250. Thus, here we have created the total allocation amount and proportion of allocation of funds to the total available funds. Similarly, we have prepared a quarterly allocation overview, which gives a monthly allocation overview, which gives details of the total available funds for each month and the proportion of funds allocated for each month. We have specified the details for each individual quarter for the year. Let's proceed further to understand more about allocation of available funds. Once we have completed the income details and expense details for the first two steps, it's now time to move to the allocation of funds. Essentially, we are calculating the total available funds, which are the income less expenses, and the amount remaining for each month. Here, we have put a formula to calculate the total income less total expenses to get the available funds for each month. Now, once we have the total available funds, we need to allocate this fund to different heads of allocation, such as investment, savings, and others. Once we have allocated the desired allocation amount to different heads of allocation, we will get the total allocation, which is the summation of investments, savings, and other allocations. Investments will be in a number format, set in US dollars. This is the same for savings and other allocations. Now the total allocation would be the summation of the investment, savings, and other allocations represented by a formula. Once we have all the allocations set up, we are going to calculate the percentage of allocation, which is nothing but the total allocation divided by the total available funds. So this is essentially a formula set to a percentage and represented by the bar to give the desired result. In order to find the total actual income, we have used a COLLAB property drawing the value from the month of income database. It has been set up to represent a sum value in the calculate part as we have seen earlier. The actual expense database is linked to month of expense database, drawing the value from there. In the fund allocation overview, each of the individual funds has been calculated by being linked to the individual databases, as we will see now. Every individual allocation is linked to the allocation of funds database, which has a layout of gallery, and it has three properties being shown, that is investment source, the allocation amount, and the percentage of allocation of each month. In the quarterly allocation overview, we have again linked this to another database, that is available funds, and we have set it out onto gallery mode with three properties being displayed, that is the month, the total available funds, and the percentage of allocation of the individual month. Here we have also represented the same in different quarters, and we have calculated the things accordingly. Here we have completed the entire budget tracker in Notion. I hope you found this video helpful. On the other hand, you have an easy way to directly purchase this template from the link in the description.